Welcome to the Author's Porch, where every good conversation happens. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride from author to author. We want to give you an experience where you learn and enjoy the conversation. Authors tell you about their journey, you learn about new books, and at the end of the day, you go home with a smile on your face because the Author's Porch is a beacon of light, bringing you home to the family you never knew you had. We hope that you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Author's Porch, where every great conversation happens. I knew I was going to do that. I'm like, what does that mean? Tonight on the show, we have Justin DiPego. How are you doing, Justin?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm trying to keep my words where they need to be. Obviously, I told you I mess up my words all the time. I'm just, a scatterbrain.
Well, we're writers. We're not built to talk to people.
Right? We're supposed to be those people that just stay in this hobbit hole and just write a bunch of books, like all those fantastic ones behind you.
Exactly.
So, guys, let me give you a little information on Justin because I've been looking forward to this conversation tonight. I actually stalked all of his socials and you have to. You got to get to know a little bit about your guest, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to, and I was like, man, this guy can draw. Like, this is some cool stuff going on here. So, Justin is an author, a filmmaker, and an artist. Why is that word not wanting to come out tonight? An artist, as I just said. And he has this fantastic book that we're going to talk about tonight, but it's not his only book. It's just the one that we're going to highlight the most tonight. It is The Wrong Side of a Working Man, and it is an urban fantasy book, mythology. It has some thriller and suspense, and it takes place in the modern day Los Angeles. And that's where Justin is tonight. So I'm really excited to talk about this book and where the forethought came for this book and all kinds of good stuff. So, Justin, welcome. And have you always been an artist? Because those drawings were fantastic, by the way.
Well, thank you. That's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been an artist on many levels, and I've always enjoyed toying with whatever medium I have at hand. So yeah, I was always drawing from the time I was a little kid. I was always either writing or telling stories, depending on how old I was. And the only, I'm not musically inclined, unfortunately. I love music, but I can't play an instrument. But that's sort of the one place where I don't get to exercise my art. But otherwise, I try to do whatever I can, whether it's filmmaking or drawing or writing a screenplay versus writing a novel. I try to do everything.
Yeah, that's good. Like, I've always kind of been like that jack of all trades, master of nothing.
Yeah.
So like I'm mediocre at a lot of things, but I can't master anything. And I'm like, darn it, why couldn't you give me those genes? Right. But when I seen the things that you're putting out there, I'm like, well, why can't I be like Justin and all those other people that can master all these wonderful things? So now you talk about this. Let's talk about the book, Wrong Side of a Working Man. And I'm thinking, like, when I think of a working man, I grew up the blue collar field, all the people, the Chrysler workers, bikers, my mom's bar, those type of things. So why that title, and what was the driving force for this book? Kind of what brought you about with this book?
Okay, well, let's see. Let's start with the title. And this will be a little insight into me as a writer and an artist in general. You might get a little inkling from the shelves behind me that I'm like, it's just in here is just full of stuff,
Yeah.
20 years ago or so, I was on a job site. I used to work in construction. And I was standing there with another guy who was in the trades, and a client that we were both working for. He and I didn't work together, but we were both working on the same house. And the client, he was just being difficult and being rude and, treating blue collar people the way people do sometimes. And the guy I was
Yep.
working with said something like, why, how stupid that he's going to treat us like this. We're working on his house.
Mm.
And I said, yeah, you don't want to get on the wrong side of a working man.
Mm.
And the second I said it, I was like, oh, I've got to remember that. That's really good. I don't know what I'm going to use that for, but
It is good.
yeah. And so, like I said, that sat in a corner of my brain for, a couple of decades. And I
Wow.
didn't know if it was the title of something, or if it was a line in a song or a poem, or if it was a line of dialogue exactly as it happened in real life. And it turned out that it fit this story that I wanted to tell, because our main character, our hero in this story, is a working man. He's an electrician, applying his trade across Los Angeles, and he's got a wife, and they have a good, healthy marriage, and they have a couple of daughters, and they're good parents. And Alex is a loving husband and father. Um, but then he discovers that there is a curse on him, and this curse manifests as just terrible physical chronic pain, and also an awful temper, which is something that he never had before. And so he lashes out, um, and he ends up losing his job, and his wife takes the girls and leaves because she doesn't feel safe. And then, because of this curse, Alex learns that he has to perform these 10 tasks, these 10 sort of mythic tasks across the landscape of Los Angeles, in order to reset his balance and to reset the balance, the sort of mythic balance of the city, in order to lift this curse. So that comes back to the title. Alex is a working man, and he has ended up on the wrong side of his life, on the wrong side of this curse, on the wrong side of the universe.
Yeah.
But also, Alex has a mission, and in order to lift this curse, he has to perform these tasks, and you don't want to get in his way.
Mm.
And so you don't want to be on Alex's wrong side. So
Yeah.
the title has sort of dual meanings, because of the path that he's on. And that's one thing about the title that I really like, that fits really well with his story, because it's all about the struggle.
Yeah. And I love that, because when you think of it, it has, even though it says fantasy, right? It has real world implications. Like, there's so much. You talked about chronic pain, right? And
Yeah.
the anger that comes with it. There's so much real world things that are playing in this. So did you always want to write it as fantasy, or was it ever going to just be just a fiction novel? Because I know that we had this conversation. I had in a group that we were in. There's women's fiction, but there's not men's fiction. It's just called fiction at that point,
Right, right.
right? Which really sucks, because there should be, if it's a man's story, it should be men's fiction.
Yeah, well, I mean, or there should be no category that is women's fiction, right? And it's
Right,
just fiction.
just
Because I mean,
fiction, right? Literary
I
fiction,
what's that?
just literary fiction.
Right. I am drawn to fantasy, um, and I didn't want to just write a, I don't know, literary fiction piece, a legit fiction piece on chronic pain, or on toxic masculinity, or to me that's not, that wouldn't be a compelling read for me.
Yeah.
And I also didn't want to write a treatise or an essay about these subjects, and Los Angeles as a setting is a very important sort of character in the story. And I didn't want to write a travel log of Los Angeles. I wanted to
Yeah.
take all those elements and put them together in a very realistic, gritty kind of way, and then introduce this fantasy element that
Yeah.
that takes you into unexpected places. So
Yeah.
that's always been more appealing to me than just a straight ahead story.
Yeah. Yeah, because and I totally get that because when you go into just a literary fiction, there is a very heavy part of that, right? And you're like, that's the humdrum of everyday life. And when people and I write what you consider women's fiction, literary
Mhm.
fiction, and it's very humdrum and very heavy, right? And it's like some people read to get away from that humdrum and that heavy. They don't want to remember all the heavy of their everyday life. They're already going through it. They don't want to
Right.
read it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with chronic pain every single day, but then I write about it in my books, and it's like, do people want to read that? So I totally get that. I love the fantasy genre. That's my gig. Like, I will read a fantasy novel. Like, I'll put away everything. I'll put away my podcast, everything to read a fantasy.
Yeah.
So you take what is every day, but yet you put the fantasy into it. It gives this compelling, this this oomph, I guess you would say, to it. So I love that you did that because it gives it so much more of an enticing feeling, and you take it that everyday setting so people connect with it, right?
Yeah, and it allows me to, because I do I live with chronic pain myself, and so I wanted to communicate that in a way that, I mean, you could do it just purely through metaphor, in whatever you're writing, whatever genre it happens to be, but I wanted to take that metaphor and elevate it and make it
Mhm.
literal. And
Yeah.
um so for me, I have issues with my neck and shoulders, right? And
Mhm.
in real life, it really does feel like a spike has been driven through the point where my neck meets my shoulder.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, just last week I had an episode that like kind of took me out for the whole week.
Yeah.
Um,
It puts you
and
down, like, in bed. Yeah.
yeah, and so and it's something I'll deal with for the rest of my life,
Mhm.
no matter what I do to mitigate it. It'll come and go.
Yep.
Anyway, but for Alex, for the hero of The Wrong Side of a Working Man, that spike is literal. I mean, because we're dealing on this fantasy level,
Yeah.
I can take what I have experienced and then have it manifest in this way that for someone else who lives with chronic pain, they can relate to. And then for someone who doesn't
Mhm.
live with chronic pain, hopefully they can take that manifestation of that literal manifestation of that metaphor of that pain and go, aha, I get, I see how this moves him through his life.
Yeah. And that's so important on so many different levels. One, it helps people that don't understand chronic pain to now understand it because it's an invisible disease, right? It's an
Yeah.
invisible condition that you live with. But it also, the people that love fantasy can see what the character is dealing with. They can, in their minds, they can see it. They can almost feel it. I mean, for me, when I'm reading a good book, I can feel what the character is going through because that's what literature is supposed to do. And like I'm already like, man, I want to read this because as a chronic pain sufferer, and I saw a picture on your Facebook where you had a brace, a black brace on you were taking, and you were talking about chronic pain. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that we were able to discuss that in here and as it being a part of your book because tying that and understanding why an author writes about certain things and that connection, you
Right.
know that they can convey the story in a way that's going to have the reader understand it. So you did illustrations in the book. You talk about you illustrated the book yourself as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just, we've talked about chronic pain, and that's an important through line in the story. But what I really want to deliver to my reader is a rousing, gritty fantasy adventure that happens to
Mhm.
take place in real world Los Angeles. And I love sort of those classic adventure novels from back in the up until the maybe 1950s. um, Adult adventures had illustrations in them. There wasn't
Mhm.
just in children's books. And I always love, I don't know, you can see on my shelves back here, I have a bunch of Frank Frazetta books. And then this right there is a collection of EC comics from the
Okay.
1950s pre-code comics. And so I've always loved that kind of illustration that was geared towards adults. And so I set out to take that sort of ethos and modernize it. So, so that it's not, so that so that it's a 21st century version of that. So
Mhm.
many of those old adventure stories are so colonial, and I didn't want to participate in that. But the the trappings of those books with the illustrations and the adventure, I wanted to borrow from. So that's where, like, for instance, the book, the first part of the book is this map
Mm.
of Los Angeles
Okay.
that gives you that's where your journey is going to take place. So it's this
Oh, cool.
fantasy style map that you might find in the frontispiece of a Tolkien book, but it's of LA.
So, yeah, because it brings you into this is happening in your city where you're at.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fantasy books, they're in made up worlds. And you're like, why do I need to make up a world? We already have one.
Yeah. I mean, my world building was, um, I want the Los Angeles of my book to be as close to real life as it possibly can be, except that there happen to be these fantasy elements that crop up. I want you to come away from the story thinking this might have happened in real life, but we
Yeah.
just never heard about it, as opposed to a fantasy where there are werewolves or vampires or something in urban fantasy that actually, like, sort of affects the world that the characters live in, to the point where it really is a parallel world to the one we live in.
Yeah.
I want this one to, like, be our world, like on a 1-to-1 scale.
Yeah. And that's something new because there's not a lot of books that try to do that. A lot of them try to like go away from here unless they're just writing literary fiction, right? The
Yeah.
fantasy books try to go totally and build whole new worlds, and people like they become obsessed with this whole new world they built. So I find that very interesting to have it set here. And I like that because I think we get in the not only the literary world, but in the filmmaking world and all these other places of entertainment as a whole, I think we get so obsessed with going outside of our world versus just, you know what, let's live here and let's make some stuff from right here and bring us all back to the real world and have just a couple of, fantasy things that happen here so that we can reconnect with where we're at. So you've written other books as well. How many books is this for you now?
This is my second novel.
Okay.
um
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt you. Go
no,
ahead.
please go ahead.
Will this be, is there gonna be some spinoffs from this? You see this becoming like a series?
Yeah, the first novel is not directly related to Working Man, but is also a gritty Los Angeles story. Um, but I will be doing. I believe that it's at least a trilogy now. Wrong Side of the Working Man, and then I'm sort of gathering my thoughts and notes on the next book in that series, and I've already sort of figured out what a third book would be. So yeah, that I'm definitely going down that road.
So you've talked about screenwriting, you've talked about filmmaking. Do you see this as something that you would put into a screenplay and present on the big screen?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely love to do that.
Yeah,
It's a question of what's the best way to deliver it? Would it make
right.
a standalone feature
Mhm,
best, or would it be better as as an episodic, as a
mhm.
series? And that's still being talked about and figured out right now with me and other people. Too
Yeah,
early to
yeah.
really, to like, there's no news to deliver, but yeah,
Right, yeah.
it's being talked about.
Understandable. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds fantastic, and I I love the wrong side of a working man. And when you say over, a couple decades ago that came out and you just knew, and when I heard it, I mean, when your agent sent me the email about the show, and I just heard the title. I was like, "Wrong Side of a Working Man." I didn't even read anymore. I was like, "I wanna hear more about that." Like, just the title itself, because
good.
like I said, I grew up, and then when I was in the Air Force, I worked with all construction workers. So, I mean, Wrong Side of a Working Man, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna get dangerous. What is this about?" And I had to
Yeah,
learn more. So, I mean, you automatically have that ear. So when you were growing, I always ask this question because I think it's really important, growing up, the young Justin DiPego,
yeah,
growing up, you're from Los Angeles, correct?
yes.
Growing up in Los Angeles, obviously you're around a lot of the entertainment world, possibly. Were you
Hmm.
around it as a child? Is this something that you saw as your future, or did you see your future as something else?
Well, I grew up in the entertainment business. My
Okay.
my father is a screenwriter,
Mhm.
and he's 81 and is still only partially retired. I mean,
Uh,
he's still doing it. So and my mother was also a writer. She wasn't a screenwriter. And my brother is a writer. And so we had a very, the whole family was all about creativity and storytelling,
yeah,
um, and expressing your art in whatever form that it was. My mom was a painter and a sculptor, and a poet, and so she passed that on to my brother and I. And my dad obviously was a writer, so it was a very creative crucible to grow up in. And I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be doing that.
mm,
That was But I was also uh very physical, and very, like, so when I got old enough to that it was time for me to get a job. um and then through my writing career, in those periods where you need day jobs, I was always, I was working in construction, or I was a horse trainer, or I taught lessons, and I worked on dude ranches and stuff like that. And so I always had very physical, blue collar kinds of working man jobs.
yeah,
And so I was always, had a foot in both of those worlds.
mhm,
And I feel like I really benefited from that, as an artist, because it gives me access to places that you might not otherwise if you live in this sort of rarefied ivory tower kind of artist existence. Which,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you get to see, I love the blue collar world, the tenacity of people, the sheer grit of what they go through, what they deal with and stuff. It's a fantastic world. It's a hard world, but it's a fantastic world. I've lived in it my entire life, but I totally get the having to have that blue collar job until this one kicks off. I
yeah,
to I understand that. I'm still I'm still there myself. I get that. I would love to see. This sounds like a fantastic show. You know what? In my mind, I'm sitting here and I'm picturing. I think it was one of the Spider-Man movies where Jamie, I can't think of his last name, where he gets electrocuted and he goes on this rampage.
Oh yeah, Jamie Foxx. Yeah.
Jamie Foxx, there you go. Like, for some reason, when I'm hearing you tell the story about Wrong Side of a Working Man, I'm thinking like that's what I'm picturing in my head. I'm thinking of like that the Spider-Man movie and that happening, and I don't know why. And I think it's because, he was a regular, he was a nobody. He
He was like
was
a maintenance worker in the lab, right? Right?
exactly, and
Yeah, yeah. So
that happened to him, and then he started going on this rampage, and it was in the city. So, like, I'm a visualization person, like, think I get visualizations in my head of stuff,
yeah,
and I'm like, "Oh, I'm seeing it happen," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm seeing this story unfold in my head," so it's really nice to and I can't do that with all books, but some of them I can see, and I really like that process. But anyways, I'll ramble forever. That's what I do.
oh no, I
So
mean that's not a bad comparison. I mean, obviously, Alex and the Jamie Foxx character are on different paths, but it's a
yeah,
similar kind of thing where you have this guy, in the Spider-Man movie, he's going to work in coveralls every day, and doesn't expect anything special
yeah,
to happen to him, and then he ends up accidentally with this power. Similarly, Alex, I mean, this is not a huge spoiler, but when he when he finds out that he's been cursed, his reaction isn't like like he basically his reaction is why, like why that I'm just in like why me?
yeah,
He's not like the kind of guy who expects he's going to go on some kind of adventure. He's not in like the context of a Spider-Man movie or something like that. He's not a mad scientist. He's not an industrialist. He's not any kind of guy that expects he's going to go on a superhero adventure. He's an electrician who works every day in different people's homes fixing their lighting and stuff like that.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, on that level, it's a similar jumping off place.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was envisioning, just this average everyday guy that nobody sees. Like no one even knew who he was. He went into work every single day. No one even knew he existed. Everyone was like, "Who's that guy and why is he important?" It just that invisible worker that you literally don't even know who exists until your lights don't come on.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and that's an
Yeah,
important
so
part of Alex's story. It's wonderful that you're saying that because it's something that I've said in a couple of different interviews and things. But yeah, when you're doing a job like that, as I have done, um, you do become invisible.
yeah.
And in my case, and in Alex's case, like you're not just it's not you're not punching in and going to work every day. You're going into people's homes and you get into their home, and as soon as you start doing what you're doing, uh they'll forget that you're there. I mean, I'm in their home with a ladder and drop cloths and my tools and going back and forth to my truck, and it's as though I'm a ghost.
Yep.
And so you get, if you're me, if you're absorbing all of these lives that you're getting to witness in people's homes or small businesses, and you're witnessing all of this life across
Mhm.
this city in this very unfiltered, uh, candid way. And that was something that I wanted to convey in the book,
Mm.
like exactly like you're saying, this guy who is otherwise invisible is all of a sudden the guy who needs
Yeah.
to go on this journey.
And that right there is a hero that everybody can love because everybody once everybody, I mean, when you find somebody that everyone's just basically overlooking and now they get picked for the quest, it's kind of like that's the hero they love. You know what I mean? Like, damn, it's about time they got recognized. It's about damn time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's fantastic. So, where can people grab a copy of this book or website? Where are we sending everybody to? I'm going to type it here so they can grab a copy.
Okay, so the book itself, the paperback is available wherever books are sold. So you can get it on Amazon or on bookshop.org, Barnes and Noble, and if it's not in your local bookstore, you can ask for it and they'll order it for you. The hardcover and I love the hardcover, by the way. The
Nope. Got it.
this sort of
Oh yeah.
um, but the hardcover and the ebook are both exclusive to Amazon.
Okay.
But easy to find. Just look them up on Amazon. And then for me, you can find me and everything that I'm doing at my website, which is DiPegoNow.com. And then I'm
DIPEGO.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm just typing it in here. I just want to make sure I typed it right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So DiPegoNow.com. And then I'm also pretty active on Twitter and Instagram. So on Twitter, I'm at Justin DiPego. And on Instagram, I'm at Justin_DiPego, just to make it a little confusing.
Underscore DiPego. Oh. Instagram.com, Justin underscore DiPego. Sometimes people that are watching the show go and grab it right then and there, or they'll come back. So I like to have it in the comments, easily clickable for them. Okay.
Excellent.
Awesome. Awesome. So what's next on the agenda? Now, I mean, you're on this whirlwind tour of podcasts. I saw that you just did a book signing as well. Do you have any book signings coming up that we can put in here for dates and times?
I unfortunately don't have an actual date. There's going to be
Okay.
something coming up as we head into the fall,
Hmm.
local to LA. Um,
Okay.
but I don't have dates for that yet. That will all be on my website
Okay.
and obviously all over my social media. I will not be subtle about it. And
You don't need to be throw it
yeah,
all out there.
yeah, and yeah, and then the audiobook is coming out soon.
Sweet.
So that's exciting. Uh, and then I'm getting to work on my next pieces, which is, I always have multiple things that I'm working on, which is why I can't sleep. so, so yeah,
Yeah, it's overrated anyways. I tried it one time and I said I don't like it that much,
right.
so
It felt like we
I
weren't
gave it
getting
up.
anything done.
I gave it up like cigarettes at the age of 40. Both of them went out the door. I gave it all up. So, well, it's been great. I've loved talking to you. Love learning about the book. The things about the reason, some of the reasoning behind the book, all that great stuff. I can't wait to see the things that you come out with and see this on the big screen one day. I think it's going to be a fantastic new story for people to connect with their world versus other worlds. Not that I don't love other worlds, because trust me, put me a fantasy book, I'm reading it. I don't care
Oh,
what world
sure.
it's in. But at the same time, this is something new and exciting because it's here in our world. Not that I've been to LA, but well, I have just on an airplane at the airport. But anyway, that's another story. So is there anything else that we may not have talked about that you want to talk about before we head out for the night and tell all of your fans, and guests that have been watching tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we covered a lot. I can plug my other book, wait,
Yeah.
there it is. That's 7 O'Clock Man, which is a sort of a gritty noir that takes place in the late 1980s on Skid Row here in LA. So
Oh,
I love a gritty look at Los Angeles, the kind of LA that you don't get to see in the media.
yeah. Yeah.
So that that's also available wherever paperbacks are sold. So
Okay.
check that one out too. And then yeah, go to my website and keep posted with all the stuff that I'm always working on multiple things. So there's always something coming up.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here tonight, Justin. It's been great talking to you, getting to know the gritty side of LA, as you say it, and the things that you're putting in your books and sharing with the world. Maybe you'll come back once you get on the big screen and share your movie or series that you have with us.
It's a
And
date.
yeah, awesome. Well, guys, that's it for us tonight. You guys go grab Justin's book, check out his website, follow him on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have everything here for you. And make sure to come back each night for our shows, and we'll see you guys. Well, not each night. We don't do this every night anymore because that was way too much for me. I got burnt out. But we try to do it every Wednesday as long as we have a great guest like Justin wanting to come on the show and share their beautiful literary art. So we will see you guys hopefully next week. Bye, everybody. Bye, Justin. We'll see you later.
Great to see you. Thanks for
Bye.
having me.
Thank you. Bye bye. This is